Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of Give Freedom a Chance, the podcast from the Libertarian Party UK. I'm your host, Luca Bocci. I've been a journalist for a long time, since 1990, and thank you for being here on this very eventful Saturday where pretty much everything is happening at the same time. So, as you may have seen from our posts on social media and from our title and everything, we will be discussing what has happened Thursday in Gorton and Denton, the by-election that has pretty much shaken up to the foundation, the British politics and the British democracy. As we've seen, it's not just a matter of saying that the Green Party has managed to win, that the Labour vote pretty much halved, that the Conservative Party is a goner, and that Reform UK hasn't managed, in what would have been pretty much an impossible situation, winning the 450 seat on their list for Westminster, is the fact that we've seen some phenomena that are completely new in terms of British democracy, in terms of block voting, in terms of family voting. So pretty much husbands that go into the voting booth with their wives, and so they are advising them on how to vote, something that is illegal, but apparently is being tolerated, and political propaganda just right outside the polling station. Again, this is illegal, but it's been going on, Palestinian flags and stuff that has nothing to do with Britain. But again, this is kind of the point. Sectarianism has infiltrated the political system and will probably change the landscape forever. So this is as consequential, possibly for UK citizens, as to what is going on in Iran at the moment with the military action that was launched by the US and Israeli air forces. Situation is developing. We will not even try to follow that. So we thought that it would be useful, again, this afternoon, to have a conversation about these topics with a couple of people that know exactly what is going on. They are very keen observators of whatever is happening in politics. Again, I cannot be myself. I'll just turn on the microphones and let them join me with this conversation. So again, we have the leader of the Libertarian Party UK, Mr. Alex Ikoski. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Luca. Good to be back.
It's really good to have you back. And also we have Sierra Marshall, which is journalist. I may call you that. You are a journalist, right?
Yeah, sort of. But I'm a blogger myself, and I suppose you could call me a bit of a public figure on social media as well, and a member of the Libertarian Party. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you never know. I'm afraid that the profession that I've devoted my life to, journalism, is not having the best PR at the moment. So I'm always wary about defining someone as a journalist. I mean, I've been writing for 35 years, so it's quite difficult for me to say I'm anything but a journalist, but you never know these days. So again, people can find you on Substack and on your social media and everything. You usually talk about libertarian issues with an economic slant, if I am not mistaken. So kind of like economic social.
Yes. So the main focus of my activity is economics, but I'll also tweet and write anything to do with social science, philosophy, AI. I branch out into many different fields as well. So there's something for everyone if you check out my Substack. But they're happy to be here.
Absolutely lovely. So again, we were discussing about the whole point of the by-election in Gorton and Denton. So obviously the Libertarian Party was there, and the result has not been exactly great. But at the same time, I might say that I didn't have it on my 2026 bingo to see that the Libertarian Party will get more votes than the SPD, which is quite something, to be honest. So Alex, as you have campaigned there, you did canvassing and stuff with Dan, the candidate for the Libertarian Party UK. Did you have any idea of what was going on in the area? Because as I've read, because I've never been to the area, to that particular area of Manchester, but it seems like there were just a couple of constituencies that were just pushed together, but they're not particularly congruent. You have one side that is traditional working class, pretty much Labour stronghold. It's been voting Labour for more than 100 years. And the other bit is more like university students and then minorities of various origin that are pretty much, it's very diverse in terms of the thing. So did you have any inkling that actually something like that was happening? Because I was surprised, to be honest. I was surprised. I didn't have any idea that was happening.
Well, I think one of the key indicators, and Kieran was there as well, I think he can confirm this, when we were in Gorton, already when we did the main campaign session 3 weeks before polling day, you could see a significant number of Green Party placards, particularly in Gorton and Levenshulme. Those two areas have a significant proportion of Muslim voters and student voters as well. My suspicion from quite early on, I thought the Greens would pip it. I didn't think they would win by as much as they did. I thought they might get 33% with Reform on 30%, not far behind. For them to hit 40% was a surprise. The fact of the matter is that they have won, which is certainly disappointing to anyone with any economic sense or any stake in the future of this country. But that's what we have to face as the reality. In terms of the Libertarian Party's performance, in terms of raw number of votes, yes, we could have done better. But you mentioned, we beat the SDP by a single vote, which was nice to see. We have a good relationship with the SDP. They're good eggs. We disagree on policy, but they're nice people. So it was nice to win that particular contest. But the main positive was wiping the floor with the Communist League. They got 29 votes compared to our 47. So, we completely trounced them. These are very small proportions of the overall vote. We've got no delusions of grandeur. There's a very long way to go, but we did defeat the SDP in their heartland. The Northwest is their main area of operations. They do operate nationally, but that's one of their core strongholds. And they had a couple of dozen people out there at one point. So to beat them is very reassuring. As you mentioned, Gorton, Denton, two very different places. Denton, as you said, more white working class, some quite middle class, nice, detached and semi-detached areas. But it looks like the Reform vote wasn't high enough. And we can't attribute that entirely to the student and the Muslim vote, because they still only hit I believe it was 28%. Labour still maintained I think it was 25%, quarter of the vote. Their vote collapsed, halved, as you said, but they managed to maintain enough to keep Reform out. But yeah, two very, very different parts that have been merged together. And there's problems for that in terms of do our constituencies, do they work in a democratic manner? And the other thing I would say, it's time now for proportional representation.
Yeah, actually, I think a guy, one of our viewers in the chat was saying, has Keir Starmer already hinted that he would postpone other election? I kind of explained to him that he tried. Then he had to back down, as always. Another U-turn, because obviously he's a big fan of U-turns, apparently. And the whole point I'm hearing is that in terms of general direction, people are overreacting, as always. I wrote an article yesterday, a pretty long article. It was kind of like a couple of thousand words. That is quite uncommon for Italian media when talking about the UK. And I was kind of describing the situation. I was advising people not to go overboard. So not to just say, oh my God, the sky is falling. The Greens are going to get a majority. We're going to have Zach Polanski in 10 Downing Street. Not going to happen. The whole idea was just pretty much, if you take the result in Gorton and Denton, which is a very left-wing area, probably one of the reddest areas in the whole of the United Kingdom, and you just make the comparison, you put it on a national scale, the Greens could have 100 seats, apparently, and Reform would be 410, 420. So it would be a disaster. So Labour would be wiped out. I think the Conservatives could have 2 or 3 seats, which is obviously it's not going to happen, but it's kind of a possibility. The thing that was worrying me most, Siren, is that we're seeing that this kind of pandering to certain areas of the electorate has been going on since forever. And I've read that the immediate post-mortem in the Labour circles will have some backbenchers that will go in there and saying, oh, this is all Shabana Mahmood's fault because she is trying to enforce some sort of more, serious kind of limits on immigration, and say, no, we should go more immigration, more open borders, more open everything, more benefits, and more. And I was just looking at the situation and saying, well, okay, so people that are just come to the UK are already on top of the council housing scarce. So pretty much they have a preference to get council housing when young British families are completely priced out of the housing ladder, and it's really difficult for them to form a families. And with the removal of the cap on children, the families that have more children will have no limit, so they can gain 67, 65, 70,000, 80,000 pounds in benefits. So this race to the bottom in order to pander to some areas seems like a self-defeating prophecy, but I'm seeing more and more parties that are going down this route. Is there any way out? Because it seems like really very stupid thing to do, to be honest.
Yeah, so I believe that in this respect, we are becoming more and more like America. So in America, both the Republican and the Democratic Party, they hold adverts, political adverts in Spanish for the large Hispanic population on a regular basis. I think that in the UK, we've had quite substantial demographic change within the last, say, 20 or 30 years. Amongst the scale that has happened in the United States, but a lot more rapidly. So we're only just getting used to the racial element of the political scene that happens in America. So in America, both parties pander to the, say, the Orthodox Jewish population in a few key swing states. It's the same with Hispanics. And then here, inevitably, it's all parties' interests, really, to self-interests, to pander towards Muslims. So I don't think that as far as the main parties are concerned, the main parties, let's face it, they don't have any principle. They're just interested in getting votes however way they can. This racialized politics is going to stay. And I am concerned about that to the extent that it is obviously going to fuel increased racial tension and resentment. And I think what is interesting is that the Muslim vote backed the Green Party. The Green Party, obviously, their policy on the transgender issue is that you can be a man with the necessary genitalia and call yourself a woman and go into a woman's bathroom, and never in a million years would expect devout Muslims to back a party that, not only fundamentally goes against the core tenets of their faith, but, says that to believe in such makes you, somehow an evil person. But because that block of votes is just so unique, it is basically a single issue. They basically vote on a single issue, which is foreign policy, Gaza, and to a lesser extent, Kashmir. I live in Bradford and I see it. And I think it's kind of interesting that, yes, this sectarianism does pose uncomfortable implications, but at the same time, I think if it only moves foreign policy towards perhaps a position that is more skeptical of Israel on the margin, and it doesn't affect our Western values of free speech, democracy, rights of women, and so on, then I think we can contain the damage.
Yeah, I think that one of the most worrying things that I've noticed is that the fact that aside from the family voting, so obviously that is completely legal. This is something that is clearly provided against. You cannot go into the voting booth with your wife or with your daughter or with anyone and indicate the vote. That's a crime. But in terms of having people outside the polling stations, this is something that has been accepted in a way in certain areas. So if you go there with your rosette and stuff and you talk to people, it's against the law, but it's tolerated. But then you see that going there with the Palestinian flag or with a sound system and blaring music in Urdu or Bangla, which is Bengali, again, it looks like some sort of intimidation to me. And just like saying, you know how you should be voting, right? So yeah, this is the point. The community has decided that we're voting for them, not because we have anything to do with their program and stuff. Instead, I've read, I think the Manchester Evening News was interviewing some members of the Muslim community in Gorton, and they were saying, "Oh, I had no idea that they were for legalizing hard drugs. Oh, this is crazy. This is a haram. This is against Islam and everything." So why you voted for them? You voted for them because they are the easiest path to power. And this is exactly what happened in Tower Hamlets. Tower Hamlets is a borough in London where mainly they're Bangladeshi, Bengali in origin, and they had been voting as a bloc for Labour for many years. And Labour was saying, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome. Oh, we're going there, permanent power." Then they created their own party that is just a Muslim party, and they wiped the floor with Labour. Labour disappeared, and they got the power because that's what they were after. They are going for the power. They're a voting bloc. They're not. It's impossible for them to be reached with policy. And again, this is what Reform has been making. Lila Cunningham is the candidate for London. She is of Egyptian origin. I know Egypt pretty well because I lived there for a bit. And she's trying to get to the Muslim vote because she's reasoning in terms of policy. And I said, well, conservative, Muslims are conservative, socially very conservative. So yeah, this is kind of, so they should be voting for a right-wing party. They should be voting not exactly for liberty, because liberty and Islam, they have a very troubled relationship. But in terms, let's read this. But in terms of saying, you should be voting for people that are saying, keep your hands off our children, don't do anything, no pandering, no experimenting with women's clothing in elementary school, as it's been suggested by the education minister. So they don't want to hear any of that. But they're voting for tactical reasons. They know that this is the path to power. And when they got to 20-30%, because I seem to remember that is around 30% of the population in that area is of Muslim origin, they're going for the kill. So now it's just a matter of tactics. And we don't think that way. Because as a majority population, we think in terms of policy. So we're not fighting the same war. Alex, I'm flabbergasted. So this means that our only future is Northern Ireland or Lebanon, God forbid, because this is what looks to me. It's quite worrying.
Yeah, it certainly is concerning the level of sectarianism. One thing I might add is it's important to remember that while the Muslim bloc vote is quite cohesive, and a significant number of them vote in the same way. It's probable in Gorton that a percent or so of the Muslim vote went to the Green Party. That there's not entirely a single block. There will be individual voters who profess Islamic faith who would have voted for other options. And on the other podcast a couple of weeks ago, a Somali gentleman who said he was voting for reform. So we just need to be a little bit careful with our wording there. But certainly the threat of sectarianism is real. You mentioned Lebanon, Northern Ireland. You could also make the comparison with South Africa. But I think both of you, Luca and Kieran, have hit on the key point that generally Muslims are socially conservative. Transgender rights and drug legalization. The Green Party's policy on drugs is actually quite similar to our own as libertarians. I personally don't disagree with it. And you had Reform coming out and saying, oh, they want to teach children how to take crack in primary schools. That's not actually their policy. That was hyperbole. And they tried to run on that, I believe, to make sure they got the socially conservative vote, without considering that the single issue of Gaza would be what many of the Muslim voters would focus on. So the campaign material put out in Urdu and other languages didn't mention any of the Green social policy, focused almost exclusively on Gaza. And what we've seen is that they see, oh, hang on, here's a candidate who's pro-Gaza and who might win, and they ignore everything else. And I think, in fact, in the majority of instances, probably the majority of Green voters didn't even know about their policy on drugs and transgender issues. So the hope is that when more of them, when the Green Party, as their publicity increases, which it will after this by-election, it has been a good result for them, more of the voters who would have voted for them on Gaza might be thinking, hang on, I don't like what's been tacked on the side with this. Will that necessarily, that might hinder the Green Party? You mentioned if we extrapolate the results from Gorton and Denton, they could hit 100 seats, but Reform would be on 350, 400, a landslide majority. So there's no risk of a Green Party government anytime soon. But there's no answer yet to the continuing sectarian balkanization of the UK. So what we might see is an increasing number of independents, like we've seen in places. I think there was one in Burnley, a couple in Birmingham, possibly Bradford as well. Independent MPs running on a Gaza themed campaign. But if I could touch on the family voting thing. While we may, really quite concerning these reports. So it's not the first time allegations have been made of family voting, but this is the first time that we've seen allegations of large-scale family voting reported to the police and the Electoral Commission. So there's a group called Democracy Volunteers who are entirely impartial. You're not allowed to work for them if you're a member of a political party. They have accredited election observers who are recognized by the Electoral Commission. So this isn't, some person off the street with a clipboard looking for something wrong. These are proper election observers. And they were, I believe, at 14 polling stations. They've reported allegations of family voting in 68% of polling stations, which is huge and significant. And the Libertarian Party has seen a response from the Electoral Commission to the Conservative Party. A little bit annoying, when they write to them, they get a response within 24 hours. When we want to register a new logo, it takes 6 months. But that's another discussion. And in this response to the Conservative Party, they mentioned that they're taking these allegations seriously. They are in contact with the police. While we don't know the details yet, no report has been released, it's looking like something quite dodgy was going on. Was it enough to influence the result? Probably not. The Greens probably would have won anyway, but that's largely an irrelevance. Even if there was one single instance of someone marching their family to a polling booth and checking which box they tick, that individual needs to go to prison as far as I'm concerned. So really, really concerning allegations there. And the problem is, the fact of the matter is such activities are considered more normal, more acceptable in certain religious, socially conservative, collectivist communities that, demographically speaking, are becoming much more numerous in this country.
Yeah, I was just trying to answer to one of our viewers. They was kind of saying, yeah, what is family voting? It literally is you go into the polling booth with your wife or with your daughter and you tell her, this is how we vote. That's it. That's illegal. You cannot do that. And this is what is happening. So this is the kind of idea. But the whole point of sectarianism that we were saying is just that it's not like it can happen. I live in Italy. I come from Italy. So the kind of pressure that happened in the 50s and in the 40s and stuff, where you would have the priest from the pulpit that would go there and say, you don't vote for communists because communists are godless heathens, and so you shouldn't vote that. That was something. But you didn't have the entire Catholic Church just going there and almost forcing people to vote in a certain way, also because Italy was 95% Catholic, so you would have a landslide. This is on a different level because you have the entire community that you go to the mosque, you go to the community center, you go to every kind of meeting. They say, we vote for this guy. And this is exactly what has happened with the Somali community in Minnesota and stuff. They are block voting. They don't care about issues. They don't care about stuff. Some parts of that, obviously it's not 100%. There will always be the outlier. There will always be someone who thinks with their own head. But in terms of block voting, this is how they manage to sell things. So they're going to the candidate and saying, we will vote for you. What are you going to give us? Are you going to give us seats in this, I don't know, in this company, in this constituency, in this area? Are you going to allow us to do stuff? Are they going to give us building permissions for mosques, which are popping up everywhere? I think I've read somewhere today that there is one guy that is actively blocking the building permits to build new mosques. So when they see that they're about to go there, he just ask for a building permission in that area. This is guerrilla, bureaucratic guerrilla. That's a very British way of doing things. But in terms of saying this is really the concerning thing, because it's so you have deals done in the background in order to get more power. And as they were asking us, how do libertarians get to the people that might have our ideals and stuff? I don't have any answer. I would just go there and say, conversation, having debates, talking about issues. I think, Theron, I don't think that people think in a block. If you are a wife of a Muslim that is an Islamist and stuff, and you're wearing your niqab when you go outside, you don't think about anything because you're constantly kept in the house and you're surveilled like, I don't know. Well, of course, your husband is going to tell you what to vote. This has been going on since forever. It's nothing new. But I think that we shouldn't agree to the logic of sectarianism and say, oh, no, these guys are off limits. They're gone. I don't know. What is the thing? I think that if we discuss, we can reach some of them. And maybe that's the way out. I don't know.
I think fundamentally what we have to understand is that so most of the Muslim voters in Manchester and across the north are from Pakistan. What we've got to understand is that Pakistan is a very tribal society. So when we import a lot of voters from the very rural parts of Kashmir, places like Mirpur, which is where most of the Pakistanis in Bradford are from, we're also importing their sectarian politics. So there's this extensive clan network called Biradri, which operates within the mosques. The mosques effectively coordinate amongst the community leaders and the families how they are going to influence politics. A lot of it is done along the lines of what's going on in Pakistan. So, for instance, you'll notice in Bradford, a lot of the Labour, even the Labour councillors in Bradford, have ties to the Pakistan Muslim League of the Nawaz dynasty. There's many individuals within local politics here, within the Conservatives of Bradford, that are connected to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, Imran Khan's party. And the economist Gareth Jones makes a very pertinent point that when we import a large block of people from another country, we are also importing their culture and their politics. And I think that, so I used to be a proponent of open borders, but we're seeing in Britain that Gareth Jones is right. There is massive, we have seen an unprecedented scale of cultural change within this country. I don't think we are necessarily prepared for. It is going to have implications for our politics. We are going to see more blatantly illegal voting activities. I think all we can do as libertarians is to treat Muslim voters as individuals, and but at all costs, we have to resist the temptation to pander to the Biradri network. All the other parties in Bradford have done it at some stage. So the Muslim votes in Bradford have at various times voted as a bloc for Labour, Conservatives, Lib Dems, Respect, Independents. So it's not ideological in any sense. It is, you're completely right, it's sectarian bloc voting. And I think that ultimately, in the long run, yes, in the short run, if we stay by our values and say we are completely opposed to any of this, we are not going to win as many Muslim voters as we would if we were to join in with what the other parties are doing. But in the long run, I think the vast majority of voters that stand for democratic values will very much thank us for sticking by our principles of classical liberalism, democracy, free and fair elections, free speech, and so on. Yeah.
I think right now, Alex, is the whole situation is there is a temptation to go there and say, okay, cities are a lost cause because it's a population is concentrated. The British white British percentages are through the floor. It's sectarianism is rampant. You have clashes. I think it was in Leicester a while ago where you had the Indian and Pakistani community that were fighting each other because stuff happened back then when there was a war between India and Pakistan. And again, I'm fearing now that with the conflict that is going on in Pakistan against Afghanistan, if there are Afghans here, they may very well exact revenge. And so the temptation is, my God, let's do what Reform is doing. We leave the city. The cities are gone. Forget it. It's okay. We'll just think about the countryside, and we'll have the dynamic that Professor Bett is telling about, where there will be a civil war where you have the urban centers against the countryside. The countryside will be traditional values, British values, and the cities will be globalist, extremist, Islamist fighting each other. So this is a nightmare scenario. So right now, we're just thinking, as libertarians, our goal is to stay firm in our ideals and say, this is what we stand for. This is our proposal. We think it's going to be good for the country, not just for the British native population, but for anyone. Anyone who comes here, lives there, it's better. it's a better thing. Just look at Argentina. I mean, Argentina is crazy. I know I'm a big Milei fanboy and everything, but you go there every day. They're passing legislation where the labor market is now liberalized, and they're building new mines, and they're exporting. The corn production has doubled, and the exports of gas and stuff. Argentina is becoming rich. Let's remember, in the 19th century, we used to say, rich as an Argentinian. It was a saying to be there, and then the country was completely destroyed by socialism. So this is our point. Am I missing something? There is something else we should be doing to get to these communities, because obviously they're not a block. That's what they want you to think. When they are walking down the street in black with the jihad flag, and they're just taking the ground. They're saying, this is ours. This is our stuff. This is we conquered you. But this is what they want you to believe. That's not real. The community is varied. There are individuals there. So is this all we need to do?
Well, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The big problem is socialism and the welfare state. When you have, huge proportions of the population from whichever background, whichever group, dependent on benefits, they are never going to vote for a party that is calling for the reduction of said benefits. And we know that statistically, ethnic minority groups are more likely to be recipients of taxpayer-funded benefits in the welfare state. But the way we reach through to these individuals is, you have significant numbers of small business owners who recognize that, Green Party policy and Labour Party policy is absolutely going to shaft them. And we need to be louder on the economic side, because that's where libertarianism wins hands down on everything. We can disagree on social issues, but when it comes to the economy, free market, full Thatcher on steroids, it wins, right? We have the empirical evidence that it wins, it does the job. So, the issue in this country, which makes, Europe as a whole different to the US, is the size of the state encourages block voting, because they can all gather around, generally speaking, our group is less economically, what's the word here? I don't want to say successful, but less wealthy than other groups. So we are going to vote for socialism. And then we can tack on other issues as they come along, be it Gaza or whatever it might be. So we need to be loud and clear on rolling back the welfare state, because then that's where individuals can flourish. And if we roll back the surveillance, surveillance state as well, but that's another matter, the welfare state, then we can bring into that, the reduction in benefits that will lead to a reduction in block voting, because people want to do the best for them and their families. And that's where I think libertarianism can reach out to some of these more socially conservative religious voters. We don't want to tell you what you believe, how to practice your faith. As long as we all subscribe to democracy, freedom of speech, and the rule of law, your private life is your private life. We're not going to preach to you on, various social issues like the Green Party will. Yes, they're going to wave a Palestinian flag with you, but they're then going to say that much of what you believe is evil. We would never do that. We say, we want to scrap benefits, give people their taxpayers' money back, and what you do in your private life is down to you. If you attend mosque on a Friday, fine. If you are currently transitioning, fine. We just want economic freedom, freedom of speech, and the classical liberal principles that Kieran mentioned. So we don't need to be, getting involved in foreign politics. I've just seen a comment here from one of our viewers. We have too many libertarian politicians like Nigel and Rupert that are destroying libertarianism. That's an interesting take. I wouldn't put. No. I wouldn't put either.
I think Nigel. Rupert said that he's a big fan of Milei, but in reality, I think only from an economic point of view, because the rest of the stuff is quite. Nigel looks to me like old school conservative. It's not libertarian at all. I wouldn't go as far to call it libertarian. It seems to me like he has accepted the Blairite paradigm. So all the changes that happened since the takeover of New Labour, he's accepting that, and he's saying, I want to reform that. I want to fix it so that it works better. While Rupert Lowe is saying, no, we should go back to a time before New Labour. But I don't think his recipes are particularly libertarian. Ciaran, you have a different view? Because, I mean, to me, it looks like some policies, but not exactly all of them. Am I missing something, maybe?
Yeah, so I completely agree with both Alex and you that these right-wing populist parties that we're seeing all across the rising all across the democratic world, they're not in any way, shape, or form libertarian. Reform have backed fundamentally economically leftist policies that Jeremy Corbyn proposed in his manifesto. Us libertarians would never do that. But also, I think, so although Millet often gets lumped in with the same populist figures as Trump or Le Pen and so on, Millet fundamentally has been incredibly serious about economic reform, whereas Trump has almost crashed the economy with sky-high tariffs. And then we've had this yo-yoing back and forth between the administration and the courts on tariffs. Millet, he did moderately raise tariffs, but that was only to reduce the fiscal deficit. He had a serious economic agenda to get Argentina's fiscal situation under control. He delivered a budget surplus year on year in the first year, absolutely impressive. And now Argentinian bonds are performing, they're trading at a higher value and lower yields than Brazilian bonds. And so that is just absolutely testament to the economic success within such a short space of time of libertarian policies. Trump, Farage, Le Pen, Restore, and so on, they don't have a serious economic agenda. They want the same as all the other parties. They want more spending, more state goodies, and currently the future for free markets in this country.
No.
It looks a bit bleak. Yeah.
No. Especially if you're talking about Rassemblement National, so the party of Marine Le Pen. They are fascist. They are fascist in terms of that. So now the fact that the term fascist is being overused, which now means everyone I don't agree with, as the saying online is, everyone I don't agree with is literally Hitler. Fascist. They're all fascists. No. Marine Le Pen is a fascist. So it's corporatist. So they want more government. Even in France had spending more than the Soviet Union in 1989. The government in France spends an outrageous amount of money. They want more of it. So they're saying, we shouldn't go, we shouldn't retire at 67 years. We want to work less and stuff. So they're just statist policies. They have no idea what is going on. Giorgia Meloni, she is super popular in right-wing politics and stuff. Oh, she's doing everything right. Yeah, of course. What is she doing? She has reduced taxes. She's more benefits here and there. If you want to change your washing machine, you'll get a state contribution. And then if you want to change your car, you get a state contribution and stuff. And say, what about you reduce taxes and give us money back? Just like that. Just a change. No, that can't happen, because otherwise you will have to fire politicians, to fire bureaucrats. And that's why when she said, I'm a big fan, Giorgia Meloni said, I'm a big fan of Javier Milei, but his policies are not applicable to Italy because we're a different country and whatever. And he said, no, that's the whole point. You're lying. And there was guys in the chat that were saying that pretty much Nigel Farage speaks conservative, but then he's a closet libertarian, while Rupert Lowe speaks libertarian, but is now backtracking and stuff. So I think it's all a matter of saying people have come to realize that libertarian rhetoric works because people are fed up with taxes and sky-high prices and everything. But that's where we have to stand the ground. We have to go there and say, hold on a second, we were here before it was popular. I don't know, Alex. It seems to me like this whole point is saying, it's not just like the usual libertarian, you're not libertarian, I am. Because this is a long-standing problem within the community. But just like saying, be honest. If you want to be libertarian, that's what you should be doing. You should close the quangos, partially privatize the NHS, get rid of 600,000, 700,000 public servants and stuff. So this is the way forward. Less people depending on the state, more money in everyone's pocket, let the market decide. This is very, I don't know, condensed. This should be our answer. Do you think this could possibly get to, small business owners, Muslims, and everywhere?
Well, absolutely. It applies to every situation and everyone. The empirical evidence is there. If you roll back the size of the state, you get prosperity. We've been talking about Farage and Rupert Lowe, and who is actually libertarian, who isn't. Farage certainly isn't. He was proposing a increased tax or some sort of restriction on second homes in tourist hotspots. I'm sorry, property rights are absolute. If you want to buy a second home and you can afford it, the only thing that should be dictating the price is the market. And if you want to buy a second home in a tourist hotspot and put it on Airbnb 365 days a year, you should be allowed to do so without restriction. That's libertarianism. The moment people say, oh, but this and that, local people, etc., then you don't believe in property rights. Okay, the issue with the housing crisis is overregulation. We can't build any homes because someone sees a squirrel 300 yards away and the whole thing is cancelled. It's deregulation, bringing prosperity back to people. Rupert Lowe does seem economically more libertarian than Nigel Farage. My concern, which many people on the right have, is if Restore start polling sense.
Okay, we're having connection 10, issues with Alex.
So that support is going to drain. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Now we got you back.
Oh, yeah, sorry, my internet just dipped there. My fear is in 2029, let's say Rupert Lowe's party gets 12-14% of the vote. Most of that will come from Reform, and we could see Reform on 150 vote MPs, Restore on 100, and then a Green Labour coalition. So this division on the right isn't particularly helpful. But yeah, as libertarians, we need to be absolutely clear. Cuts. How do you know if someone is a libertarian when they are unashamedly calling for massive cuts? Thatcher on steroids. People say, oh, you'd want to see thousands of public sector workers, lose their jobs. No, we want to see hundreds of thousands of public sector workers.
Not millions.
Millions, yes, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it is the market that provides prosperity. It is the market that provides freedom. And we are the only party that is absolutely clear on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I would like to just point out one thing that is, obviously the conversation is slightly, has taken a detour, but I think it's very useful. The way that people say Javier Milei is a populist. And I'm looking at them and saying, not really. He had very strong economic foundation. He had a very good plan. He decided with Sturzenegger, Adorni, and the other ministers they're having, he said, this is my plan. It's going to be painful at the beginning. You're going to have losses and stuff. You're going to lose money. But then we will have so much prosperity. Argentina will be great again. But he was going with the chainsaw, and he was singing stuff with pop singers, and he was going into the talk shows and saying that if someone is an idiot, someone is an idiot, and saying that leftism is the worst of the worst, using words I cannot use here on YouTube because otherwise we get our stream blocked. He was very outspoken, but he was very outspoken in the defense of these ideals and saying statism is bad. And when the government is able to do everything for you, is also able to take everything from you. So this is the whole point. I don't want the government to give me stuff. I don't want free stuff. I want the government to allow me to earn my living and to find my place in the marketplace. If I'm unable to work because I am in an accident and I cannot work, okay, some sort of assistance should be provided. But why cannot be provided by, I don't know, local churches or local communities? This is how it worked back then. Before the NHS, it's not that there were no hospitals. There were hospitals that were privately run. And if you weren't able to pay the hospital bill, you would have your fellow workers, your fellow community that would go there, pool resources, and pay for you. You know, common society stuff. And then we have decided that private charity wasn't a thing and that the government should provide everything. And this is the point. If you are a miner and you're working in a mine, there is an accident, you die, and then all your other miners provide for your widow and your children, the widow and children are grateful because they're saying, these families have taken money out of their pocket to pay for me. I'm willing to help the others. I'm grateful. If the government sells you the idea that if you die in an accident, I will pay for you forever, you want more. You're not grateful anymore. And this is the tragedy. So I think that right now, the whole point is, it's very simple. Our recipe against sectarianism is, I will not talk to the community leaders. I will go there and say, I'm talking to you that you have a corner shop. I'm talking to you that you have a local firm and everything. Wouldn't it be better if you had half the taxes and half the regulations? And if you wanted to hire someone, you could hire someone without having to worry about 75,000 forms and permits and stuff. This is the reality. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something because it looks quite simple, to be honest. Siren, am I missing? You are on the ground, and so you're having a vision of what is happening. Do you think this message has potential?
Yes, I think that people, when you propose that there is something different, that there's a better world out there, a different world, we don't have to have a welfare state, immediately the first question that comes to people's minds are, well, what happens if we have this unfortunate scenario? The state, there's plenty of papers and empirical evidence which shows this, crowds out philanthropic activity and private markets to the extent that most people don't realise that there is unemployment insurance and even disability insurance should you be unfortunate enough to have an accident, provided entirely by the private sector. I think, why can't we have a lot more of that? You know, I'm getting involved within the effective altruism community. That's allocating money towards causes which are saving millions of lives, far better than the welfare state could ever achieve. And I think that we need to approach the safety net as an entrepreneur would approach any other issue. The government didn't give us the AI and the phone that I'm using for this chat right now, and we've got to tell people. And I think our message, we have to curate our message such that we say, yes, we want to spend a lot less on things which we previously took for granted, but you will have so much more money in your pocket, and you will be able to within a day, just hire people on the spot. You won't have to worry about getting planning permission from the council if you want to extend your cafe. You don't need to worry about getting a license to do X, Y, and Z or any of that. And then we just need to allow, and then this Schumperian creative destruction would take place, and it would allow a lot more innovation and private action. And I also think that private action within a libertarian society would make people more altruistic and philanthropic, because they'll be able to see innovative ways of promoting that. And it will sell people onto the idea. So I think we need to curate the message that did Steve Jobs decide not to build the iPhone because it would say, oh, it might disrupt the people and the infrastructure reliant on those old, box-like computers. No, and we need to say fundamentally we are entrepreneurs, and we've got a plan which is going to radically alter society towards the same extent that the introduction of the iPhone did, for the better, and make that concrete analogy which people can understand.
Yeah, I think that the whole point we're having is that if you make a very, I think that there are memes on the internet that are very, very powerful, and saying that if you put a comparison between the private and the public sector, you see private sector and you see evolution between the first mobile phone. There was the super boxy thing that was back in the 70s, and it was massive, and the battery would last for 20 minutes, and then you would throw it away. And then you look at the phone you have right now in your pocket that has got more power than the Apollo spaceship that went to the moon in '69. And you're thinking of that and saying, private industry progresses at such a rapid pace because it's got incentives to improve and provide a better service. Yeah. Public sector doesn't have any incentive. They've got a monopoly. They've got monopoly on anything, in schools, in services, in regulations, in planning and stuff. So they have all the interest to make things more complicated, to grow their numbers, to get more money, to get more benefits and everything. And this is why empires fall. Empires fall because of bureaucracy. It's proven. You study economic history, that's the point. The whole idea is that people are so enamored with the fact that, oh, I don't spend anything for the NHS. Just because you don't put your hand in your pocket doesn't mean you're not paying for it. You're paying for all of it. You're paying for all the waste, for the £500,000 that you're giving to a pen pusher in this trust, on that trust and stuff. You're paying for all of it. And then if you make a comparison, I used to work in the financial sector many years ago, and sometimes we would go there and say a private pension, and I would go to the guy and say, well, how much do you think you will earn when you retire? And he said, oh, 80% of my last salary. And I said, oh yeah, that used to be the way. Now it's different. And he was horrified when he figured out that, oh my God, I'm going to get 40% of my last salary. How am I going to survive with that? I said, okay, fine. If you're giving me £200 a month, I can guarantee that you will have a bigger salary. And he will say, oh, no, you're lying. You're absolutely lying. How can this be possible? And I said, well, because of the wonderful nature of compound interest and market returns and stuff. People don't have that. But at the same point, I think in America, they're saying health insurance is so expensive. But there are some sort of societies. I think I've seen one that is, it's kind of like faith-based society, and they say, well, you're contributing to a fund, and if you have a major surgery, if you have a major accident and stuff, we will pay for it. So it's not nearly as expensive as health insurance, but it's as it used to be, common aid societies and stuff. So I think that we should be doing this. And this could be a way out of sectarianism and stuff, because people are ultimately motivated by their own interest, I guess. Okay, yeah. I'm seeing here. So yeah, Siren is. Oh my God!
Sorry, I've got a train.
You told me you were on the way. Come on, let us say goodbye rather than jumping away in your car. So thank you so much, Siren, for being here. And I'll just allow everyone else, if they want to follow him on Substack and everything. Thank you so much for being here. Bye. Okay. No, he's gone and now he's back. Bye, sir.
Yeah, sorry. There's just disconnected from Wi-Fi, back on 5G.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot for being here. Follow him on that. And it's this actually, we were about to wrap up because we're gone over 1 hour. So thanks a lot, Siren. And obviously, biggest thanks to Alex Sikowski, leader of the Libertarian Party UK. Thanks for being here. It's very, very good. Now we have a haircut. Thanks a lot. Alex, anything coming up party-wise?
So the May 2026 election, so Gorton and Denton's wrapped up now. We are looking to hit 20-30 candidates across various regions of the UK. If you want to stand for the Libertarian Party, please get in touch. Email address on the website, through social media. We're looking for candidates. If you believe in liberty, join us, because we are growing massively. We are taking the fight to the mainstream parties, and we are going to get elected representation in May. So please get in touch.
Okay, lovely. Thanks a lot. So thanks a lot, Siren. Thanks a lot, Alex. And obviously, the biggest thanks is for everyone that has followed us this afternoon. We're trying to be more disciplined to keep it 1 hour, because obviously you have the rest of your day. Again, if you haven't done so, join the Libertarian Party UK on the YouTube channel, on our X, TikTok, Facebook. You can find us everywhere. If you can, get involved at the local level, because remember, politics is made at the local level. We all like to talk about the big things, the big stuff, but if you get involved at the local level, we can start changing the nation. Thank you very much for being with us this Saturday afternoon, and we will see you again next Saturday for episode 13 of Give Freedom a Chance. Thanks a lot. Have a nice weekend.